Welcome to Coach's Corner on Beaver County Radio. Tonight's show will also be live streamed on our Facebook page at WBVP-WMBA. Coach's Corner is brought to you by Junction Auto Service, McGee Heating and Air Conditioning, Geneva College, Fishers New Brighton Foodland and Beaver Falls Save-A-Lot, the Community College of Beaver County, the J&J Spratt Funeral Home, and the Beaver Falls Municipal Authority. Now let's take it to our host for tonight's edition of Coach's Corner on Beaver County Radio.
It's a new year, folks. It's a milestone season of high school football on WBVP and WMBA. Our 75th year. It started back in 1948 with the great Chuck Wilson, and it continues to the present day, 75 years later. I'm Barrickman. I've been doing games longer than I care to make news to you on, but it's another season. To my right, guy that might look familiar to many of you watching on Facebook tonight, and you're going to hear his voice momentarily. John Perado. He has covered high school sports. He's covered Geneva College sports, primarily for the Beaver County Times in years past, and he covers the Pirates for a number of publications, some of them at the national level. Why is John Perado here? He's one of our new announcers this season on WBVP, WMBA, including the FMs 99.3 and 95.7. And John, first of all, thanks for being a big part of it. Looking forward to working with you on most Friday nights. And John, welcome.
Thank you, Bob. It's good to be here. I'm very excited about this new chapter in my journalistic journey, for lack of a better word, but it should be a lot of fun. You know, I've born and raised here in Beaver County, watched a lot of football over the years, high school level, and looking forward to seeing some really good ball games this year, and you know, I'm excited about kicking it off on Friday night.
And where will we be? The Battle of the Bees. Beaver Falls at Blackhawk, Fighting Tigers and the Cougars, 6:30 airtime from Blackhawk Stadium in Chippewa. That'll be the WBVP game. And on WMBA, back with another season with us, Bruce Fry and Mike Asady. And later on, we'll have the expertise of Rob Matsey, who returns to radio. And Rob, state representative, we do pass along our condolences. Rob just recently lost his mother, and our condolences go out to the Matsey family. But we're looking forward to having Rob on board to help us a lot this year, mostly on WMBA. So we got a number of people, producers. We got one back from the last couple of years, and Curtis Walsh. Great to have Curtis again. And we have a new producer for the Coach's Corner and upcoming games, Zach Boswell. Zach, welcome to the sports team at Beaver County Radio. John, this is going to be a preview. No coach tonight. We'll start with the coaches next Wednesday. But we're going to have a preview tonight of the upcoming season, maybe do a little recap of last year. And we'll also talk a little bit about the upcoming Beaver County Sports Hall of Fame banquet. For the first time, they're going to have it at the end of summer. It's going to be this Sunday, August 28th. It all begins at 5 p.m. at the Fez. And I'm talking to a Hall of Famer. John, what was it, 4 years ago you got in?
Yeah, 2018. 4 years already. Yep.
Wow, that's great. And we're going to talk about the new class. In fact, this class had to wait a few years because of the COVID pandemic. We haven't had a banquet in the last 3 years. So, but patience pays off, and we'll talk a little bit about the Hall of Fame. But the season preview, getting ready for season number 75, John. And let's recap last year for a moment. What a year it was. We had 5 teams from our coverage area that went to, at that time, Heinz Field. Now, some of those teams, let's hope, gets to Acrisure Stadium, the new home of the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Pitt Panthers. John, we had Aliquippa, Central Valley. They went on to win state championships. We also had a pair of Tigers, Beaver Falls and Moon, and Our Lady of the Sacred Heart. I mean, even though we've been well represented in years past at Heinz Field and Three River Stadium, to get 5 teams from the area to the big house, that's a pretty monumental effort, and what a year it was.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly can make a case, and you know the history of high school football in Beaver County as well as anyone, that it was certainly one of the greatest seasons for high school football in Beaver County ever. I mean, to have that many teams make it to the WPIAL championship game, and some of them beyond that, was really an amazing feat. And I realize there are 6 classes now, which means a few more spots are open.
Right.
But still, it's difficult to make it that far. You have to beat really good teams to make it that far. And so many of the Beaver County teams and the Beaver County area teams did. And it was really, I think you could have to rank it up there, if not as the best season ever in Beaver County high school football, certainly right up there with any other season.
Well, John, I think in a sense you could say it was the most successful, because last year was the first time in the 34 years of the PIAA playoffs that 2 teams from Beaver County won state championships. Aliquippa, a 1A school enrollment-wise, doing it in 4A. That's a story in itself. And Central Valley winning its 2nd straight state championship, and now riding a county record 27-game winning streak. So those were big stories. Aliquippa winning the state on a Thursday. 2 days later, Central Valley repeats.
Yeah, and really amazing. And Aliquippa, the thing is, they've got a good chance to repeat. I don't want to put too much pressure on them, but they've got a lot of people back from that team, and it's, if I were an Aliquippa fan, I would look into getting a good room rate now in Hershey before the prices skyrocket before the state championship games, because I think they have a good shot. In Central Valley, I mean, what Mark Lyons has done there in the 10, 11, 12-year history now that the school, since the merger between Center and Monaca, they've consistently been outstanding year after year. And, I know they lost some very key players, some very good players to graduation, but he has that program built to the point where it sustains itself, and they're going to have another good team this year. Whether they win a state championship, that's pretty hard to make it 3 in a row, but they should be good.
Well, case in point, bold prediction on my part, both Central Valley and Aliquippa will not win state championships this year.
Wow.
Well, simply put, they moved Central Valley up to 4A.
Well, yes,
and Aliquippa's in 4A. I really went out on a limb.
Yeah.
Predicting, will one of those teams do it? You'd like to believe that that'll happen. Central Valley plays Aliquippa the final game of the regular season. Who knows if they meet them in Acrisure Stadium later on. And that game, by the way, is going to be at Freedom. That's one change this year. Aliquippa, with the renovation of Carl A. Ashman Stadium, will not have a legitimate home game. So they have to play such teams as Central Valley, West Allegheny, and Newcastle, 3 teams you figure would be in the playoff hunt, and they have to play them at Freedom.
Yeah.
You have the artificial surface, and that's what they're going to have at Carl A, but it won't be till next year. Aliquippa will not have a home game. They switched home and home with North Catholic and Ambridge, so this year they'll play at North Catholic and at Ambridge. Next year they'll entertain them when Carl A. Ashman Stadium's ready to go, John.
It's a lot to ask of most high school football teams, but I'm not so sure this team is going to be bothered too much. I think they could play anywhere and pretty much have a pretty good chance to beat anybody. But it is certainly a challenge that no other team would face this year, at least here in Beaver County. So, yeah, that is one thing that could trip them up. But, you got me on that 4A thing. That goes back to the experience of being Chuck Wilson's first broadcast partner in 1948.
Oh, yeah, that's true. He's dating me, folks. The show here on Facebook Live, WBVP, WMBA, 99.3 FM, 95.7, presented by St. Barnabas. And John, our 2 games, you'll be joining me at Blackhawk Stadium, Beaver Falls at Blackhawk. That'll be a 6:30 airtime. And on WMBA with Mike Asady and Bruce Fry, Western Beaver at Beaver. They didn't play for 50-odd years. This will be the 3rd year in a row. Remember, folks, they're still kicking off late at Pat Tarquinio Field, so that won't go on the air till 7. That means it's going to be a little bit later wrap-up show brought to you again this year by Falcone's Moon Township Ford, and then we'll carry it up to 11, and then Don Rebel and his staff from Trib Live will go over all the teams and scores from the WPIL in week 0. This is week 0 because none of these games count in the standings. That's why they came up with week 0. John, getting back to Aliquippa, they might have 6, 7, maybe 8 players getting heavy D1 interest. Cam Lindsay, who's going to be just a junior. You look at his ability, and you look at Brandon Banks, who's only a junior. DJ Walker is getting a lot of interest. Nico Crowder. But the guy I know that's really stolen the headlines last year, they call him Tyke in Aliquippa, Tyquay Hayes, as a freshman. And he didn't even start till near the midway point of the season. Gains over 1,700 yards. He's the 4A Player of the Year. He'll be at the Beaver County Sports Hall of Fame banquet collecting some hardware for his efforts last season. I mean, this is a very talented team. I don't think head coach Mike Warfield would hide that fact. I'm sure that he's going to preach the message, though. Guys, let's not be complacent. Let's be hungry. The competition could be a little stiffer just with the addition of Central Valley alone.
And, Aliquippa traditionally has a few, always seems to have at least one Division I type player on their team, and oftentimes a couple. But I don't remember, even you go back to the 1988 team, which was almost 35 years ago now, and they were loaded. They had Sean Gilbert, who was the USA Today Defensive Player of the Year, National Player of the Year,
right,
who went on to a long NFL career, and a lot of other Division I kids, but not 8. I mean, they didn't have 8 Division I players,
right,
and that's truly an amazing feat to have that much talent in a town that small. I mean, you're not talking about a big pop. This isn't a 6A school.
Right.
This is a 1A school that's forced to play 4A, and don't get me started on that with the PIAA. And you have 8. I mean, it's like what are the odds are astronomical that you'd have that many major college players in a town that small.
John, and just to finish your thought, of course, the PIAA initially bumped Aliquippa up to 5A because of a competition formula, which we won't take the time to go on the air because it might take the whole hour. But basically, in a nutshell, because of their success, they tried to bump them up to 5A. Aliquippa appealed. Fortunately, won the appeal. They're still playing 3 classes above, coming off a state championship. I mean, what more can you say? This program, enrollment-wise versus where they're playing, it's an amazing story. I'm sure they're not getting any sympathy. We talked about the 7 or 8 Division I prospects, but still, you have to give a lot of credit to Mike Warfield and his program for getting these kids in a position to get major Division I scholarships.
They are, and Mike has done a tremendous job. And, it's hard to follow a coaching legend, which I think we all would agree Mike Smianik is, with all the success he had at Aliquippa and the WPIL titles and the state title he won. It's hard to go and maintain that success unless you're a really good coach, and Mike Warfield is a really good coach. I mean, his record certainly indicates that, and it's just impressive. Even the best programs usually have a down year. They haven't had a down year since 1989 So, yeah. So, I mean, that's a long time not to have a down year.
Yeah, absolutely correct, John. We're going to go into a break, but just to add on to what you said about Mike Schmianik, he's going to be a volunteer assistant this year at Ambridge under one of his former pupils, and Sherman McBride. What a great story that could be. It'll be interesting when he's on the opposite sideline from Mike Warfield and the Quips. But that'll be interesting. When we come back, we're going to talk about the few coaching changes in the Beaver County area, along with Western Allegheny County, and Lawrence County shows up on the coaching change level here. We're going to take this time out. 75th year of high school football. Looking forward to it. And the Coach's Corner preview for the 2022 season continues after this on Beaver County Radio and Facebook Live.
Are you in high school and thinking about your future, or know someone who is? Consider Geneva College. Geneva is a Christian college that prepares students for meaningful service and their life's work. Geneva has over 145 majors and programs, 18 varsity sports, 100 study abroad programs, and lots of club activities. And Beaver County scholarships help to make a Geneva education affordable. Learn more by visiting geneva.edu. That's geneva.edu.
It's football season, and if you can see the Aquaman of Beaver County heading deep on a fly route to the end zone, it shouldn't surprise you. This is Jim Riggio, the Aquaman of Beaver County from the Beaver Falls Municipal Authority. Why, you ask? It's obvious. Going deep or the full distance for our customers, no matter what we are up against, is in our game plan. Now, what isn't quite so simple is getting my web feet into a pair of those cleats. This is the Aquaman from the Beaver Falls Municipal Authority. And looky here, I'm wide open that is, to doing whatever it takes to serve you. Click bfwater.net.
Did you know Fisher's New Brighton Foodland is as close as a click? That's right. If you're watching or listening to this broadcast online, open up a new window and click GroceryStoreNewBrighton.com and start shopping right now. Fill your grocery order from New Brighton Foodland and follow Beaver County High School football all at the same time. What could be better? Fill your shopping cart up without ever leaving the sidelines. Visit GroceryStoreNewBrighton.com.
Scoring big at dinner doesn't necessarily have to mean getting the score run up on your family food budget. Level the playing field by shopping at Beaver Falls Save-A-Lot. There's a reason why they say your dollar goes far at Save-A-Lot. Maybe it's time to switch teams, and while you plan for a big playoff run, head out on a grocery store run. Even when time is running out, being able to park close to the door and find what you need in an instant without wading through a maze of aisles makes Beaver Falls Save-A-Lot the right call.
Returning to this preview of our 75th high school football season on WBVP WNBA 99.3 FM, presented by St. Barnabas, in 95.7, the new kid on the block who came on board during high school basketball this past year. And with me, John Perado, who is stepping into the broadcast booth to go along with his other duties covering Pirate baseball, and but he's going to be with us. And John, you got a nice position with Robert Morris University as well.
Yeah, I'm starting my second year here. The fall semester starts next Tuesday. It'll be my second year as the advisor to the student media, the RMU Century Media. So I hope try to help give my advice where I can to the young aspiring journalists, whether they be in print or radio or television. And it's been a lot of fun. The kids are great. They're really great. Or students, I'm supposed to say, not kids,
yeah,
students.
Right.
And they've been really great, and I've enjoyed it, and I've been welcomed with open arms. And really the only job I've ever had in my life has been in media, sports writing. And it's been something different to do that, and something I've really enjoyed, just something totally different than I've ever done, and it's pretty cool.
Well, good. We also want to give out a shout to Pizza Joe's in Beaver. They've been supporting the Coach's Corner for 20-odd years. This year is no different, and thanks to Tony and all the fine folks, Tiffany, who run the show on 3rd Street in Beaver. And we're going to enjoy some of that pizza as well. Our producers tonight, Curtis Walsh, and another new kid on the block, Zach Boswell, joining us this year. And on WNBA, for the most part, you're going to hear the likes of Bruce Fry, Mike Asady, and Rod Matsey. Bruce and myself will cover most of the Geneva College games. They won't start until Saturday, September 3rd. John, new coaches in the area. We'll start off with New Brighton. Joe Greco, after 24 years, interesting, he coached 12 years, took a break to coach college football at Westminster, comes back, spends another 12 years, and steps down. He's still the athletic director with New Brighton, but he steps down. And Tony Keltori, who's been around the block and kind of maybe sits under the radar, but Tony has been a fine assistant for a few programs. I know he's been at Central Valley and Blackhawk, and I believe he's helped out at Western Beaver, but all of a sudden he takes the head job at New Brighton. So you're talking about a rookie head coach replacing a 24-year veteran. But good luck to Tony, and we hope to have him on in the short future.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting. Anytime you have a coach for that long in one program, obviously it's a shock to everyone's system a little bit when somebody new comes in. But like you said, Tony's a very experienced assistant coach, and I remember going back to when he played at Monaca. So he's been around football for a long time, and I think that there's always a few bumps in the road when you transition to a new coach, but I think they'll be relatively minor, and I think Tony will do a good job at New Brighton because he's a good football man.
Yeah, good luck. The Tony Keltori, the new coach at New Brighton, will be catching up with the Lions in the next few weeks. New coach at Quaker Valley, Jason Kappa, the son of Jake Kappa, who had some fine years at Riverview, and he takes over a program. Boy, it's been 5 years now since Jerry Vecchio took a team out of nowhere to the state championship. But Quaker Valley, it's basketball and soccer come 1-2, or maybe the soccer belongs at the pinnacle with all the state titles that they've won, and it's tough to win. Ron Baylog decides to step down, and Jason Kappa will bring his enthusiasm and hopefully success to the Quakers.
Well, yeah, you're right. The state championship did come out of the blue, and it reminds me of going all the way back to when Quaker Valley won the MAC in 1983, and Sam LaFossa was the head coach. And Sam never minced words, and I covered the game. They won the title, and he said, the people here better appreciate it because there'll never be another one. And I was stunned when he said that. And I think his point was he was frustrated that football wasn't a priority like it was in most of the schools in this area. And, he was right for over 30 years. They never did win another conference title. And then when they did win one, they went all the way and won the state title. But, the Kappa family, a good football family. I know maybe a lot of people here in Beaver County not as familiar. But like you said, Jake was a very successful coach at Riverview. And Jason, he comes in with pedigree. It's a tough spot. Quaker Valley hasn't won a whole lot over the years. But he'll give it his best shot, and you got to think being around the coach all his life like that had to rub off a little bit.
Donnie Militzer is the new head coach at Our Lady of the Sacred Heart. They went to Heinz Field last year. Little did we know that was going to be Dan Bradley's final game as the head coach. He takes over an Elwood City program, John, that has lost 25 games in a row. Now, he's probably puzzled people in the past. I think he just likes those challenges and doesn't care if they make any sense. I mean, he brought Ambridge back to some notoriety, leaves there for a private school in Our Lady of the Sacred Heart, A lot of success, wins the WPIAL, runner-up last year. Now he goes to Elwood City. He lives in the Avonworth School District, and some people will say, why would he go from Avonworth School District all the way to Elwood City, taking over a program? You know what, though? He is so positive and enthusiastic. When I called him months ago to congratulate him, he said, oh, you know what, it's not that as far as drive as you think, Bob. I'm looking forward to it. I think he's going to bring some energy to this program, and basing on what he's done with other reclamation projects, look what this guy's done. You can't sell him short. This might be his biggest challenge yet, however.
It might be, because Elwood, this is historic with the losing streak they're on, pretty much. And, it's been an odd history at Elwood City. Sometimes they've been really good in stretches, and then other stretches in their history, they've been really bad. And then they're in a really bad stretch. There's no way to get around that right now. But he's got a proven track record, like you said, of turning programs around. He did a great job at Ambridge. He did a great job at Our Lady of the Sacred Heart. And, this is going to be a challenge, though. And, if people think he's going to go in and work miracles the first year and win like 7 games and go to the playoffs, I think that's going to be a tall order. But I think you'll see incremental progress with Dan as the coach. And I really believe Elwood will snap that losing streak and find a win or two somewhere along the way in the 2022 season.
Well, Dan Bradley has to go into a conference that's loaded for bear. Yeah. You start with Beaver Falls. Now, they got, after losing their first 3 games a year ago, they rip off 9 wins in succession. They get the Heinz Field, and I'll say Heinz unless we're referring to what is going to happen this year, then I'll say Acrisure. But Heinz Field was the home of Beaver Falls' second straight trip. Unfortunately, they picked the biggest stage to have a really tough performance. They couldn't hold on to the football, 9 fumbles. That's not going to beat many teams, and it surely didn't beat Sarah Catholic.
No, and it's a shame because they got off to that 0-3 start, and their season could have went totally down the drain. They hung in there. They ran off a bunch of wins, get all the way to the championship game, and I'm sure a lot of those kids are back this year, and I'm sure that had to leave a bitter taste in everyone's mouth to not play well in that game, and like you said, to have those fumbles. And I would think that the Tigers use that as motivation to come back stronger than ever this year. This is a group of kids that have been together for a while now, and I think they want to. If there's one team that wants to get back there more than any team, it's got to be Beaver Falls, and I think they were good enough that it could happen.
Well, certainly. They're going to have a 4-year starter at quarterback in Jaron Brickner. They got the veteran wideout in senior Trey Singleton. They got a solid running back in Isaiah Ashbacher. They got a few big guys up front. I think this team is at least equipped to make another run under Nick Nardone, who's going to be entering his 6th year as the head coach at Beaver Falls. So I think Beaver Falls is certainly going to be on the radar this year, and it's going to be a tough opponent for Dan Bradley, the new head coach at Elwood City. Another team, we could talk about every team's prospects. Another team in that conference, I've been hearing some good things about your alma mater, Western Beaver, the a co-op agreement they have with Lincoln Park, and they're getting kids from Lincoln Park. They have a 4-year quarterback at Xavier Lefebvre. They have Levi Gray, Dorian McGee's a big target, and they got a couple other kids who play basketball at Lincoln Park. John, Ron Busby entering his 2nd year. Now that he's probably a lot more comfortable with the challenges of being a head coach, I think this could be a sleeper team.
Talking to some of the people at Western Beaver in the community, they're excited. They do think they're going to have a good team this year and make a run at maybe winning the conference. And Xander Lefebvre, I think he was the year ahead of me at Western Beaver. He was there so long. I think
he is one of those players that seems like he's been around for 8 years.
I think he was the quarterback my last 2 years of high school at Western, if I'm not mistaken. But in all seriousness, you know how valuable it is to have experience at that position on any level of football, whether it's the NFL or college or high school or whatever, and to have somebody that's going into his 4th year as a starter and just knows the offense in and out. I think that makes a big difference for Western Beaver. And like you said, and it's just not his show alone. He's surrounded by some talented players. So I think Western Beaver is definitely on the upswing this year, and I could see them having a real good year.
Well, before we leave Western Beaver, John, probably, not probably, the biggest disappointment during the off season, the loss of Rich Niabala, the longtime football coach. Yeah. You knew him very well when you were in high school at Western Beaver. He passed away in early July. Didn't get to see his son. Kim Niabala gets the head job at Union after helping Mount Lebanon win the state championship last year at 6A. But he got to enjoy Kim's exploits on the football field and on the basketball court. But Rich Niabala, who's been a frequent visitor to the coach's corner, like at Roberts Roadside Inn for many years, we miss you, Rich. And but I know he's going to be watching from his box seat the Union Scotties and Kim Niabala. But what a special guy he was.
He really was. He really was, Bob. He had an influence in my life, certainly, as somebody who I played baseball for him in high school, and he was had him as a teacher for 6 years, from 7th grade all the way through my senior year of high school at Western. A wonderful coach, had a tremendous record, won WPIL titles in 3 different decades with 3 distinctly different teams. They weren't like they won in 89 and 90. I mean, they were spaced apart. And he won in different eras. He sent a few kids to, they weren't loaded with Division I talent, but they had a few over the years. And that's probably the most impressive part. He didn't have like 5 or 6 Division I kids on his team. Western Beaver's a small school, and he consistently won, and he was loyal to Western. I know he had chances to go to bigger schools over the years, and I know he wrestled with it, but his heart was always at Western Beaver, and he had a wonderful career there, and he'll forever be remembered. The football stadium's named after him, and I'm definitely going to miss him, though, no doubt.
Oh, there's no question. And I think one thing that Western Beaver allowed him to do, being that he lived in the Blackhawk school district, and no one was going to unseat Joe Hamilton as the coach. So his son Kim, he got to watch him on most Friday nights because Western Beaver played their home games all on Saturday. And I think that turned out to be a nice fit for Rich. He got to follow Kim. Now, after Kim graduated, then you think, well, am I going to maybe observe some other potential openings? But he never did. 31 years at Western Beaver. What a story.
Yeah, really. And it's neat, and today you just don't see coaches stay in the job that long. It's a little bit different world for a lot of different reasons. We could spend a whole show just on that. But, yeah, it's neat. And he put Western Beaver on the map, Bob. He got there, I believe, in the 4th or 5th year the school was open. And he started winning pretty much right away. They had a winning season his first year. That was their first winning season. Got to the WPIL championship game in his 3rd or 4th year, and they had a little rough luck against Jeff Morgan that day at Washington High School. They got beat pretty bad. But they got back. They won it in 76, won it again in 83, won it again in 94. So, just a very successful tenure. And, the thing is, I think all of us that had him as a teacher, all of us that played sports for him, he had definitely an impact on our lives. And I think if you ask anybody, the kids I grew up with in Ohioville Borough, I think they would say the same thing, that he has a bit of a stamp on all of us.
Rich Niabala, what a legend, and we miss you, Rich. And we'll take this time out. our special preview show, taking a look at high school football season number 75 on WBVP, WNBA, 99.3 FM, 95.7 FM. We'll talk a little bit about the Hall of Fame coming up this Sunday. That's coming up after this break on Beaver County Radio and Facebook Live.
You can run out and buy a new car if you can find one or afford one, or you can take good care of the one you have. Take it from Steve at Junction Auto Service. It's all about maintenance. A lot of things have changed in the past few years, but taking care of your car isn't one of them. Now more than ever before, it makes good sense to maintain the vehicle you have, and nobody does it better than Junction Auto. Mention you heard this ad and get 10% off any visit. Visit junctionautoservice.com or stop by their location at 425 Constitution Boulevard, New Brighton. No matter what the circumstances, no matter the reason, one of the few things that is left when a loved one passes on are the memories. Staging those memories in an honoring way is one of the reasons so many people have chosen J&J Spratt Funeral Home. A person's legacy depends on a lifetime of accomplishments and then how they are remembered. J&J Spratt Funeral Home has helped start the process of creating positive legacies for over 70 years. Visit jjsprattfh.com. Joseph M. Spratt, Supervisor and Funeral Director.
McGee Heating and Air Conditioning in Aliquippa has been in business for nearly 60 years. Now that's experience you can count on. When you call McGee Heating and Air Conditioning at 724-375-7112, they'll answer your call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Sue Curlin and her winning team service most brands, and McGee Heating and Air Conditioning is locally owned and operated. As always, they wish their best to our local teams. McGee Heating and Air Conditioning, Main Street, Aliquippa. And we continue. The Beaver County Sports Hall of Fame banquet, normally in April, but with the COVID situation the past few years, there hasn't been a banquet. They wanted to have one in May, but they just weren't ready to pull it off, so they moved it back to the end of summer. So for the first time, a summer Hall of Fame banquet, which will be the 45th overall, and it'll be at the Fez, where it's always been. It'll be at 5 o'clock on Sunday. The new class, 10 inductees, but on top of that, 20 pioneers are going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Larry Zigarelle, the president of the Hall, came up with this idea to acknowledge people, athletes, coaches who competed at the professional level, John, in the years leading up to the end of World War II in 1945, and a well-deserved honor. And of course, all of the members, all of the pioneers are deceased, just with the nearly over 75 years since they competed. But there will be a couple family members accepting on behalf of the couple pioneers. And so 30 new inductees. This is like maybe the Hall of Fame class last year in pro football. That included the great Jimbo Covert.
And it's neat because, you know, sadly, a lot of those athletes, a lot of those sports figures kind of been lost to memory because so many people that saw them play are no longer with us either. And I give Larry a whole lot of credit. I know he spent hours and hours and hours going through microfilm and reading up on these guys from the Beaver County Times and the News Tribune when it was in business in Beaver Falls. And I know Larry put a lot of time, just like he did when Geneva inducted their first class of Hall of Famers. Larry was on that committee too, and it's good because they should be remembered. And you hate to see people fall through the cracks, and that's what was happening with people from like the turn of the last century or in the World War I era or even leading up to World War II. So I think that's a really nice touch, and I'm really happy that those people aren't lost in history.
Let's go over the list, the current 10 new Hall of Famers. Sam Bechtel, Talk about him in a little bit. Ron Brown from Midland. Sam Bechtel was the longtime sports editor at the Beaver County Times. Bert Lawton from Riverside, director of communications for the Steelers. Verquan Kimbrough taking a couple jabs at the podium on Sunday night, the great boxer. Charles Fisher, one of the great athletes in Aliquippa history, got drafted early in the second round in the NFL draft a number of years ago. Gene Epley from Midland, he is deceased, but he will have representation there. Let's see. Anthony Dorsett, you might have heard of his dad, Tony, but Anthony, an Aliquippa native, and he had a pretty decent NFL career of his own. After playing at Pitt. He played with the Tennessee Titans, and he was a starter in Super Bowl 34, so that's saying a lot.
Yeah, he had a rather long career in the NFL. He played for a number of years, and he did have, and that's right, I'd forgotten about that. He did start in that Super Bowl.
Jason DeLuigi, he's done so much for sports medicine. Lives out in Arizona. Barry Cox, he was an outstanding running back for the old Center High School back in the early 80s. And that pretty much talks about the new class. Ron Brown, John, we grew up both in the Western Beaver School District, but I used to see those Midland teams. You're a little bit too young probably, but Ron Brown, along with Simi Hill, Norm Van Leer, what a team. 1965, unbeaten. And Ron Brown might have been the dark horse on that team. He was a stud, and he didn't get the publicity that he deserved because he had two future NBA and ABA players in Van Leer and Hill.
Yeah, a lot of people tell me it was a little bit before my time, but I'm certainly very familiar with the 65 Midland team. I've heard pretty much all the stories over the years about them because I worked with the late, great Andy Nuzzo, and he covered that team, so he told me many of the stories at the Beaver County Times when we worked together. But yeah, I've had many people tell me he was the third best player on a team in Beaver County history in any sport. And he was so good, especially in basketball, that any other school in the area, he would have been the star and he would have gotten all the headlines and scored all the points. But like you said, he happened to be in the same graduating class with two future pros, including one that played in the NBA for a long time in Norm Van Leer.
Let's talk about someone you knew very well. And Sam Bechtel you knew, but one of the writers who's going to be inducted posthumously, John Mino, who passed away a few years ago in 19, I believe. And John, you wrote alongside of John Mino, and there was a stretch of like 40 years where he didn't miss a Pirate game. Yeah. And there were some bad teams in that stretch. We both know about that. For him to do that, that's Hall of Fame material right there.
Oh, it is.
But I'll tell you, the guy could put the pen to the paper and do a great job.
I always said his Sunday column in the Beaver County Times was the best thing it ran in the paper all week, and nothing was even close. And we had some very good writers, so it wasn't like there wasn't a lot of competition for that title. John, you're going to get me tear up like you almost did with Rich Neatball, I hear. John and I, we sat together in the Three Rivers Stadium press box for 13 years, side by side, and he's a good guy. He was a lot of fun, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of breaking up a little bit here.
That's okay, John. I know how close you were to John, and John Mino definitely had a nice wit about him. I mean, I don't think I read an article by him that I didn't like have a smile or a wry smile after reading it. And I said, boy, this guy's got some talent. And he'll and his sister Linda Soldressen will be will be receiving the plaque in his honor. And Bert Lawton, what a job he's done with the Steelers. In fact, I don't think Bert realized at the time, I don't think the schedule was out yet, but I think he was talking to Janet Zigarell, the secretary, and she said, well, what would be a good date for you, Bert? He said, well, How about August 28th? So it turns out the Steelers play their final exhibition game, but Bert will be at the Fez on Sunday night, so he is committed.
Well, I'm glad because I was hoping Bert would be there because, like I always tease Bert, I said, I don't do a whole lot of football, but when I do the Steelers, I always say, don't give me a hard time, Bert, as I remember you when you played center field and point guard at Riverside High School. But I'm real happy for Bert. He said, he's a great guy. He's had a wonderful career in sports, in public relations at Pitt and then with the Steelers now for many years, and very well deserving, kind of a behind-the-scenes guy. Maybe a lot of people don't know.
Right.
But if you ever see the end of a game and you see Mike Tomlin, the bald-headed guy, that's Bert Lawton next to him.
Any more questions? That would be his big any more questions? He'll take 2 more. That's you'll hear Bert's voice.
Yeah.
Okay. And another name that jumps out at me is Charles Fisher. What a career. I'll never forget maybe my most enjoyable weekend in the years that I've been covering high school sports. When Beaver Falls won the state basketball championship on a Friday night, and Aliquippa was in a different classification at that time. The Aliquippa players were watching from the end zone at the old Hershey Park Arena. Now, the next day, and the Beaver Falls fans are saying, let's go Quips. Let's go Quips. You talk about a tearjerker.
Yeah.
I was besides myself. How rivals came together on this night in March of '94. Aliquippa had to play Carbondale, which had a state record 59-game winning streak.
Remember that. Yep.
They beat them by 3. Charles Fisher was a big part of that. But it was football that got him to the next level. WVU, drafted by the Bengals, first pick of the second round in '99. Unfortunately, career-ending injury in his first game.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, seems like he's handled it pretty well. Has made his home in Kentucky right across the bridge from Cincinnati since then. So looking forward to seeing him and sharing some of those old memories.
Me too. And, it was sad. I mean, he got a raw deal in life when it came to his football career in the NFL. I think there was no doubt. We knew, we both knew Chucky, and I think he would have had a fine career in the NFL. I think he'd have been a top-notch wide receiver in the NFL, and unfortunately, he had that injury, and just it was so severe he could never totally come back from it. But like you said, he still lives in Cincinnati, and that's pretty amazing. Where somewhere where you would think you have a bad memory and you'd want to get as far away from Cincinnati as you can. That says a lot about it.
He's been there for 20-some years. Yeah. That's the Hall of Fame. The banquet this Sunday, 5 p.m. at the Fez. And I'm looking forward to stepping in for Chris Shovlin this year as the host of it all. And I'll tell you, I'll be intimidated by the group on my left, the group on my right. There's a lot of history there, as it always is, for the Hall of Fame banquet.
And you've been on that podium, and I've been on that podium, and it's quite overwhelming.
Oh, it
really is. It's very humbling to be there.
It sure is. Football Friday night. We start our 75th season. And John, Blackhawk, a team that's trying to bounce back from a rare off year. Zach Hayward's done a tremendous job at Blackhawk, but last year they were a little green, and I'm not talking about one of their uniform colors. A lot of inexperience, suffered a 2-8 season. And that stuff happens when you play the likes of Aliquippa and teams in 4A. Well, they're still in the same conference, but this will be a good tune-up, and that'll be the WBVP game on Friday night at Blackhawk Stadium. Beaver Falls and Blackhawk. Beaver Falls, I think they're surely going to want to make an opening statement against the Cougars. And Blackhawk wants a comeback season, and let's hope they do.
I think so. Like we talked about Beaver Falls being hungry coming off that loss in the WPIL championship game. Blackhawks got to be awfully hungry too. They had, like you said, a down year, 2-8. But they had an unlucky year too. And I know Zach Hayward wouldn't make excuses. Or his players. They had a lot of injuries. They lost a lot of close games. It could have went either way. It could have been a lot better season for them. But just about anything bad that could happen to a team happened to them last year. And you end up 2-8, and I think we all know that they had better talent than that. It was just some bad luck, and I think they'll be much better this year and have a much more representative record because you can't have that much bad luck 2 years in a row.
Let's hope not. And that'll be our WBVP game. John will join me 6:30 Friday night on WNBA. Mike Asady and Bruce Fry. Western Beaver at Beaver. Beaver has dropped down to 3A this year after being in 4A for a couple years. Court Rouse in his second year, I think he has aspirations of making a longer run in the playoffs. Of course, there's no guarantee he'll make it, but I think this is a good fit for Beaver. The competition won't be easy, but we're not talking Aliquippa and Central Valley either. And I think Beaver might be in a good position in 3A this year.
Yeah, I think so too. And, they have a new quarterback, which, there may be a few growing pains there in Isaac Pupi, but he's very talented. I've talked to people that saw him in their scrimmage. They were very impressed the way he ran the offense, the way he handled himself. And, yeah, I think Court Rouse has a good team there, and I do think they'll be good. And this is going to be an interesting matchup because you have two teams that have high hopes for this season, albeit in different classes, Beaver in 3A, Western Beaver in 2A, and I think it should be a good ball game.
I would agree with you on that one, John. John, I have to bring out something. You've been a long-time listener to WBVP and WNBA, and
I heard Chuck Wilson. Not in 1948, but I used to listen to Chuck Wilson.
Well, the name that I'm bringing up, in between Chuck Wilson and Chris Shovlin, you had John Flaherty. I'm sure some of our old-timers are going to remember John Flaherty. What's your memory of John Flaherty?
My memory of John Flaherty is saying, regardless of the outcome, I hope your team wins.
That's fair. That sounds like a Yogi Berra statement. But no.
Said by Mr. Magoo.
But John, one of the play-by-play announcers in the 75-year history of WBVP, and I guess it's getting pretty close to quitting time, isn't it, Curtis? Couple minutes to go. 2-minute warning. John, looking forward to having you and Rod Matsey adding on to our group this year. We have Geneva College, where you went to school. Yeah. Gino DeMarco, 30th year at Geneva.
Where does the time go?
Wow.
30 years, yeah. I was thinking Ernie Klein, another former WBBP.
Right.
He was the lieutenant governor. Now we have State Rep Rob Matsey. Is this a springboard for me to maybe be governor someday?
I'll put your name in the hat.
Okay.
You'll get my vote at least.
Well, good. At least I'll get one vote.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if my wife would vote for me or not. Maybe I'd get 2 votes.
We'll talk more about that, but it should be a great year. And we want to thank Pizza Joe's for being on board each week for the Coach's Corner, providing the pizza and the snacks and the pop and all that good stuff. And Curtis Walsh. Curtis is doing some work for KDKA. Great to have his expertise back with us again this year. Zach Boswell, Curtis's dad, Keith Walsh, on board with us again. And we got guys coming out of the woodwork. Matt Durzik, the morning show host, he wants to see us fighting Tigers Friday night. He found an excuse to get the Blackhawk to hold one of the cameras.
Absolutely.
And so looking forward to that. Frank Sparks will be pitching in, the program director. So we have heavy artillery ready to go. John, looking forward to working with you.
Looking forward to working with you, too. And I think the reason everybody wants to be at that game is because you'll be there, Bob. Everyone wants to be around you.
If I'm the biggest part of the game, we're going to have a snore, nothing battle. No, but thanks, John. But that's going to do it for us. Our preview show, and next week we'll bring in one of the coaches here to the radio station here on 7th Avenue in Beaver Falls. For Curtis Walsh, Zach Boswell, John Perrotto, Bob Barrickman, good luck, John, too.
Good luck to all the teams in the 2022 season.
There we go. 6:30, it all starts Friday night. That's Beaver Falls at Blackhawk, 7 p.m. Mike and Bruce will have action from Pat Tarquinio Field as Beaver hosts Western Beaver. Geneva starts the next Saturday on Beaver County Radio. For all of us, Bob Barrickman, looking forward to year number 75 here on WBVP, WNBA, 99.3 FM, presented by St. Barnabas, 95.7. Good night, everyone.